The Tally Hall internet show contains a series of skits called the Dream Journals. They each take place in a member's head, and they tell a story that's normally quite scary. Most of the dreams contain dangerous situations, but which one is the most dangerous? Spoiler alert, I'm gonna answer that. Let's begin with the simple answer. The least dangerous. It's Ross Fetterman. I don't think anything dangerous happened during his dream journal. I mean, Joe, Andrew, Rob, and Zubin are surrounded by chairs. So are those chairs, like Ross, came in to become a chair and then became a chair? Or were they already chairs and like Ross is like a weird human who's trying to become a chair? And in that case, will he stay a human and then like the warrior is like suffocation? Are Joe, Zubin, Andrew, and Rob sitting on past humans, or are they sitting on chairs? If the chairs are past humans, are they still sentient, or do they lose their sentience when they become a chair? Yeah, I think I'm overthinking this more than is necessary. I think in reality, this is just the dream equivalent of a normal interview, and so the worst that could happen is like he gets anxiety or something, and I doubt like you'd suddenly die from that. Basically a harmless dream journal. Moving on. Okay, let's do Andrew. Now I know a lot of stuff happens in Andrew's dream. It's an entire episode, 9 minutes worth of footage. I also know throughout this dream journal, Andrew is featured as an actor multiple times. However, Andrew is seeing the dream from the perspective of whoever is in the lift. Either him or Martin, we don't really know. Since he spends the entire thing inside of a lift, I kind of consider him walled off from all of the skits, so I won't count the skits as any kind of danger. So, what's the most dangerous thing that can happen? A lift accident. So in the episode, Andrew goes through 15 skits, each skit being a new floor. This is much like the 15 flights and Taken for a Ride, which the episode is named after. I'm sure there's a symbolic meaning behind why there's 15 flights, I don't know. So worst case scenario is that Andrew free falls from 15 flights up. But here's the thing about lift accidents. They're very unlikely. Lifts are actually the safest form of transport. And yes, that includes walking. There are so many safety mechanisms inside of lifts that having an accident is very rare. A lift is held up by minimum 4, maximum 8 cables, each that could hold the lift up individually. That means even with the worst case scenario of 4 cables, if 3 of them snapped simultaneously, you'd still be supported completely fine. But hey, let's say worst case scenario. Every single last one of those cables breaks simultaneously. You still are unlikely to freefall, or at least you won't for very long. You see, lifts actually have brakes. There is a wheel at the top, and if it starts to spin too fast, like in a freefall, these mechanisms called flyweights will catch the teeth. This connects to a lever, which connects to some clamps that will clamp down on the guide rail. But despite all this, I will acknowledge that lift accidents still occur, and they still do result in injury and death. Although majority of lift deaths happen to those who are doing maintenance on the lift. And when it comes to passenger deaths, most of those happen from people trying to escape a lift after an accident. So if you're ever trapped in a lift, please stay put and wait for someone to come help you. However, despite being an extremely rare occurrence, it has happened in recent enough years that lifts have free fell. It is, however, possible to survive this. For example, Alan Mann, Donna Giordano, and Alan Friedlander were all in a lift. It ended up plummeting 900 feet from the 78th floor. I will say many did die from this, but those 3 survived the initial fall. However, Giordano and Friedlander were not able to escape. The only survivors of this were Alan Mann and an unknown woman. Since Alan Mann is the only identified survivor of this incident, it is fair to note that he did suffer a lot of injuries. Another example is probably a more well-known case. Betty Lou Oliver plummeted 75 stories. That's 1,000 feet, which means she holds the world record for the most floors plummeted and survived. She survived because the lift car created a cushion of air that softened the fall. Again, she didn't get out of this unscathed. She had a lot of injuries like a broken pelvis, back and neck, but she went on to live 54 more years. I think it's also fair to note that both of these were caused by a plane crashing into the building. Mann being the South Tower during 9/11, and Oliver being the Empire State Building. So it was very specific circumstances, and they might have affected whether people survived or not. Okay, so just how likely is Andrew to get into a lift accident? I ask some weird questions, don't I? In the United States, there are about 30 fatal accidents a year related to lifts. About half of those are engineers, but I digress. 1 in every 66 lifts have an accident every year. So let's say a typical lift carries 10 people per hour. This is done for 8 hours a day and operates for 5 days a week. This equates to 20,000 passenger trips per year. So this would mean the chance of a passenger getting injured in a lift would be 1 in every 1.32 million. So to conclude this segment of the video, Andrew is pretty safe inside that lift. The only other thing you might have to worry about is like gas or something. No, I'm not talking about smoke from a fire, I mean like if someone farts in there. And that would in theory be a great transition into Joe, considering that video I made. But unfortunately, I'm transitioning into another member. Okay, Zubin, let's establish the plot of his dream, because it's kind of questionable. Zubin's dream is just him going through multiple birthday parties, but he increasingly ages? Now, the reason that's phrased like a question is because he's probably about 24 in the first one, though if we base off the number of candles, he's 9. Then he and his friends become 91, so he should be at the end of his life by that point. But then he has more birthdays on top of that, but they don't look like the rest. Everyone's like weirdcore. So did he die, or is he just immortal and just living forever in this weird dimension? By the flowers, I presume he died? But it just gets weirder and weirder from there. Since it's best to go with the most generous option in these cases, I'm gonna say that he does in fact die. Considering Zubin lives to 91, his cause of death is probably old age. Though 2/3 of all deaths are old age, it isn't technically very dangerous. If we're being literal, old age isn't actually a cause of death, it is the fact that you get weaker when you're older. And anyone who lives to be old will experience these changes, so not exactly dangerous. So I guess I'll have to go off things that didn't actually happen but could have happened. Now, is there anything here that's particularly dangerous? Ah, right there. Fire. Candles cause 4% of home fires. So, from 2008 to 2010, there was an estimated 365,500 fires in residential buildings each year. Now, if my maths is correct, that means that 14,620 of those were caused by candles. Candles also cause 3% of home fire deaths and 6% of home fire injuries. That means that in 9% of those 14,620 fires, somebody got killed or injured. Now, I was never very good at maths, so feel free to correct me, but I believe that means 1,316 of those fires resulted in somebody getting injured or killed. Basically, please be careful around fires. And also, thanks to these statistics, that makes this a decently dangerous dream. The odds of dying due to fire or smoke are 1 in 1,236. This is against the ratio of 1 in every 1.32 million. Therefore, Zubin is more dangerous. Rob's dream is just him walking in a straight line, getting visited by Zubin who has Heelys, and then proceeding to get ran over, while Zubin survives because he has Heelys. These men's minds never fail to amaze me. So since we're only looking at Rob, this should be a super simple dream. Well, also I thought. You see, I'm no car enthusiast, nor am I American. Luckily, I'm close with somebody who is a car enthusiast, and my dad knows a thing or two as well. I asked them, Lucas gave these suggestions, and my dad said Ford. However, that's where they used ran dry because they're all British. So I talked to YouTube. This is where it gets confusing because like a bunch of people came forward with different answers. There was one that kept on popping up, but then somebody whose dad works at Ford came forward and they said that's not a Ford, that's a Suzuki. So I'm just sitting here like, what? Okay, well I guess my dad's a software engineer, so maybe it's not as like believable from him, but like, what are all these people on then? And how do you know? What's happening? My resolve is to take the car that was brought up most and take the lowest weight it could possibly have, just in case. You know, it's always best to be generous. The car evidently decelerates as it nears closer to the two actors. This means I'll use the speed it's at when it's closest to him. Since the brisk walk is about 4 miles per hour and these guys are straight dawdling, I'm gonna say it's 2 miles per hour. Acceleration is change in velocity over time. It appeared to start about 5 miles per hour. This means the change in velocity is 3 miles per hour. To find the time, I used my phone's stopwatch. I then timed from when the car started to decelerate to when it reached 2 miles per hour. I repeated this over and over again and then found the mean time. You like my duck tie? Dear past me, no one cares. Get back to being discount memulous. The mean time I got was 7.19 seconds. If we convert 3 miles per hour into meters per second, which is 1.3411 meters per second, we should be able to get the acceleration by putting those numbers into the formula. Rounding up, this is 0.19. Acceleration multiplied by mass equals force. If you convert pounds into kilograms, then rounded, we get 1,845.7. This means that the final force is 350.683. You need at the minimum 3,500 newtons of force to kill an adult. This means the force that Rob got hit by is not enough to kill him, which is something you can tell just by looking at the bloody video. So what's the point in all this? Well, I guess it rules it off as a suspect. I do far too much work for these videos. So the cause of death will instead be how much weight is put on him. Since we ruled out the force being what's killed him, it is instead going to be the weight of the car on his body. Okay, so how much weight does it take to crush a human being? Not much, actually. I mean, just look at crowd crushers. What tends to kill you first in a crowd crush is when your chest can't expand anymore. Then it's internal bleeding, but I digress. So when the car begins to compress Rob's chest, that is when he can't breathe anymore. However, Rob stays screaming until he wakes up. If you're experiencing compressive asphyxia, you probably wouldn't be able to scream very well. So this means we're putting realism aside and saying that he's probably having his organs and bones crushed right now. That'll be his cause of pain, but is it enough to kill him? And more importantly, how does he die? Now, different bones in his body will be able to withstand different amounts of weight. So you'd need over 1,000 kilograms of weight to crush a human being. Our car does in fact weigh more than that. Now I know what you're thinking. Wiz, Rob is screaming. He's not dead. Well, yes, you are right. But you may notice it does cut away briefly before it cuts to him being awake. If it wasn't already dark enough that he was getting crushed alive, now you can be aware that he only died once he got his skull crushed. Look! You can even see his torso nearing the ground. And considering it only takes 235 kilograms of force to crush a human skull, it's very possible to do it with a car. Anyway, enough about Rob's bones getting squishy. The odds of getting hit by a car while walking are approximately 1 in 4,292, and the odds of dying from said pedestrian incident is 1 in 468. We're getting more dangerous with these dream journals. But is there anybody who can top this? Joe's dream journal consists of him working with his father. When they park, Joe is given the instructions to leave the windows rolled up, and when he asks why, he isn't answered. This leads to Joe rolling down the window despite his father's wishes out of curiosity and then getting plugged in the head. Now, of course, thanks to my video, we know the real reason why he rolled down those windows. But let's stick to the reason the media wants you to believe. So let's cut to the chase. He died to electrocution. Specifically, he gets shocked in the head. Now, due to this dream being a dream, there are some things that wouldn't apply in real life that apply here, like him having a socket in his head and then getting a plug plugged into him. So I'm just gonna say that he got electrocuted in the brain. Hang on a minute, where have I heard that before? Ah, probably nowhere. So my instant thought when thinking brain getting electrocuted was electric chair. I mean, there has only ever been one survivor of the electric chair. But you see, that was the issue. There has only been one survivor, and that's because electric chairs are made to be lethal. Willie Francis only survived because the electric chair had been set up improperly. This meant he didn't receive a lethal shock. The electric chair has 1,825 volts at approximately 7.5 amps for 30 seconds, then 240 volts at approximately 1.5 amps for 60 seconds, and then a 5-second pause. That's not going to happen if you just get shocked by a plug. A North American plug socket only has 120 volts in it. But most commonly, electrical desks have an alternating current at 100 to 250 volts. And people have died with as low as 42 volts. And current can't exist without volts and vice versa, so it's good to look at how high the voltage is to find out whether someone will die from it. Also, the brain is a vital organ, so a shock directly to it is probably not good. Now, the chance of dying due to electrocution is 1 in 15,037. Though to be fair, electrocution is considered in the same category as radiation, extreme temperatures and pressure, but never mind. So I guess he can't be Rob. Well, that's where you're wrong. You see, Joe is a passenger in a van. This van looks to be moving at 30 miles per hour. This is important because most car accidents occur under 40 miles per hour. The chances of dying in a motor vehicle crash are 1 in 93. This means that Rob getting hit by a car is less deadly than Joe getting into a car accident within the car, or at least it's more likely to happen. That means there are two dangers at play in this dream journal. One that's unlikely but did happen and definitely would kill him, and another that didn't happen but is more likely to happen. This all accumulates to make the most dangerous dream journal, Joe's dream journal. So if you're going to be trapped in a dream journal, be trapped in Ross's, and do not be trapped in Joe's no matter what you do. Though if you think about it, it doesn't really matter, because no matter what you do, it's always just a dream. Glad I finally got to use my copious amount of knowledge on random things no one would ever need that much knowledge on. Looking at you, lift safety mechanisms. And I hope I made my physics dad proud. Though even if I didn't because it was wrong, that doesn't really matter because that equation literally added to nothing. Never say I'm not dedicated. If you have any strange Tally Hall related questions, ask them down below, I might answer them. Thank you for watching.